There is a podcast that lies between the imagination of two simple-minded earthlings. Travel with these two longtime friends, Jimbo and 80s E, as they attempt to explore the fifth dimension. Follow along with them as they take the key and unlock the door to the vast space between shadow and substance. This podcast is one of trivia, of insight, and of sounds and ideas from one of the greatest television shows ever produced. You are embarking on a timeless journey. There is your signpost up ahead. You are entering the tragedy of cinema's Twilight Zone.
As must be obvious, this is a house hovered over by Mr. Death, that omnipresent player to the third and final act of every life. And it's been said, and probably rightfully so, that what follows this life is one of the unfathomable mysteries, an area of darkness which we the living reserve for the dead. Or so it is said. For in a moment, a child will try to cross that bridge which separates light and shadow. And of course, he must take the only known route, that indistinct highway, through the region we call the Twilight Zone.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Tragedy of Cinema, the Twilight Zone series. I'm your host, Jimbo, and joined again once today by my buddy in the fifth dimension.
That's right. From the northwest side, it's 80s E, trying to avoid all these fireworks going off around me. Hopefully, we won't pick any up.
Man, it's getting scary.
Yeah.
I was like, thought the Civil War was going on behind my house earlier.
People were letting them off like during the daytime. It's crazy. Like, wait till night.
Right. We've been away for a minute. There's been a lot of things happening in our life. Eric's daughters graduated high school, vacations, family trips, all that fun stuff going on. So we're back trying to hammer out season 2 and get it all finished up. This episode, Long Distance Call, number 1, it's pretty weird. I'm not going to lie. It's kind of, what would you say? It's kind of
ominous.
Creepy.
Ominous, yeah.
Yeah, creepy. Yes. But it is also the last one of the videotaped episodes, I do believe. I believe this is number 6 of the videotaped episodes. But Eric, before we get started, I'm just going to throw this out there. This episode's about a little boy whose grandma gives him a toy phone for his birthday. She's dying, and he can communicate with her, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's the gist of it.
Right.
But I have a question for you before we start. I just wanted to throw that out there, so I just didn't throw this out here without the audience know what I'm talking about. So, Eric, I'm going to start off with a bang for you right out of the gate. Eric, if you had a phone and you could place one phone call to somebody that has passed away, who would you choose?
Oh, well.
Just have one more conversation with them.
It's funny.
And you only get one.
Okay. Probably my grandfather, my mom's dad. It kind of ties in well with this episode because it was like, I actually was going to ask you this question later on in our episode, but we'll go ahead and bring it up now. For me, it was the first significant funeral that I ever attended, and one of the closest people to ever pass away at an early age. I was like 9 years old, so it affected me pretty much throughout my young life. I used to have dreams that I would talk to him again, and he would come have a reoccurring dream where I would be sitting down at like a kitchen table with him and talking to him. So yeah, if there was somebody that I could call and talk to again, it would probably be my grandfather. And
okay. So
just to follow up, I guess to ask you, what was your first memory of a close relative or someone that was close to you dying? Do you remember that?
I do. I was lucky enough to know both of my great grandparents, all of them pretty much, except my great grandma on my dad's side. But he remarried, so I got to meet her. But both of my great grandpas died within 3 months of each other. But the one that you see them, but like one of them lived in Tennessee, and the other one lived kind of down the street from my grandparents. So I never really got close with them.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
But the one that probably stands out, the first one that I can really remember that had an effect on me would probably be my grandpa on my mom's side, which you remember him. I think he was your Sunday school teacher at one point too. And I was fresh out of high school. I believe it was in July of 97 when he died.
Okay.
So I wasn't really young, but I was still young enough, that it affected me in different ways. And same thing, I'll tell you this right now because I haven't really ever told this to anybody. I've told a couple of people, but I'll let the audience know on this. When he was in the hospital, he was asking, hey, where I'm at. And they're like, well, he's at work. I was working at Burger King at the time. And when I would go over there and I would cut their grass for him.
Right.
And I had this dream. And I remember going into this hospital room. And he was sitting there with like a white T-shirt on, and sitting up in the bed, and the white sheets and all that. And all I can remember from the dream is he said, have you been cutting your grass for your grandma? And I said, and I said, yeah. And he said, well, keep on doing that.
Yeah.
That's all I remember from that.
Yeah.
And then like the next day he died. So, from then on, I cut my grandma's grass and everything, made sure, but that's just a memory I have of that. Right. And watching this episode, it brings back a lot of those memories, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And it's kind of hard sometimes, but you don't want to forget those memories. You want to hang on to them as long as you can. And to have something like that where you could reach out and call them and just hear their voice one time. I know we're in the age of where the old VHS tapes, we have some of those hanging around that have some of him on there, you know what I mean? So I have some of that, but those are getting harder and harder to keep secure and to keep safe because, they just deteriorate over time so quickly. So I need to look at transferring some of that stuff over to, digital so they can live forever. So
right. Well, yeah, it's an interesting episode how those thoughts and feelings sort of, are refreshed and brought back into the front of our minds. Yeah, you were obviously young in high school. I was 9, and yeah, it was forever impressed. It made an impression upon me, and it was a pretty significant point in time in my life. And so I'll go ahead and not really a good segue into the episode.
Well, sorry we got off track there of the episode a little bit about our personal life, but you'll see how it ties in as we go through this episode.
Sure. So this episode is entitled Long Distance Call. It is the Twilight Zone season number 2. It is episode number 22, and it was directed by James Sheldon. It was written by Maxwell Sanford, not Stanford, Sanford. Maxwell Sanford was the author, and Charles Beaumont and William Idelson. So sort of a triad there of writers on this particular episode. The original air date for this episode was March the 31st, 1961. And that, of course, brings us to our favorite segment that we have around here. It's a segment that we like to call On This Day in History. Okay, so on this day in history, for March the 31st, let's talk about the 53rd Academy Awards. The Best Picture Award went to a film called Ordinary People. Okay, and the Best Actor Award went to Robert De Niro for Raging Bull. And this was the 53rd. I don't have the date written down. I think it's 1981, if I'm not mistaken. I apologize. I forgot to write the date down, but this is 1981, I believe. So Robert De Niro for Raging Bull for Best Actor. Best Actress was Sissy Spacek for Coal Miner's Daughter. Both of those guys won, and those are two great movies. You should check them out. I don't think we've covered either one on the podcast, but they are... Raging Bull. Sorry, yes, yep. I apologize. Raging Bull we did cover.
And Coal Miner's Daughter, is that the Loretta Lynn story?
Yes, that's correct. So that's also a very good movie. All right, so I started a trend, and we're going to go move to 1985, and we're going to talk about WrestleMania 1. It was at Madison Square Garden in New York City, and Hulk Hogan and Mr. T beat Rowdy Piper and Paul Orndorff. Paul Orndorff?
That's Paul, Mr. Wonderful Orndorff.
Orndorff. Baby. Thank you.
I just watched WrestleMania 1 like last week. I started all over watching them through.
I knew I could.
Also in WrestleMania 1, Eric, you may remember, first match was Tito Santana versus the Executioner, but in match 2, you had King Kong Bundy taking on Special Delivery Jones, where King Kong Bundy squashed him in 9 seconds.
Boy, here we go.
WrestleMania record at the time.
I've set him off loose. I've set him loose. So thank you for that name correction. I knew I could count on you for that proper pronunciation
That's
of
right.
the name. And then,
hey, wait a minute, Eric.
Yeah.
Eric, do you remember when it was my birthday one year and we went to that wrestling match?
Yeah, of course.
And it lasted they taped like
Forever.
6 different shows or something. We were there till like 3 a.m. It was beautiful. We watched Brutus the Barber cut so many guys' hair that night.
Yeah, that was a pretty good memory. Yeah, that was a long taping. I do remember that, of course. I think that was at the old Market Square Arena, maybe. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, where Elvis gave his last performance.
That's right. Skipping.
Boy, we are just full of knowledge on this Twilight Zone episode today.
Full of unuseful knowledge for sure. So skipping ahead to 1990, this is a little known trivia fact. Carol and Company, starring Carol Burnett, premieres on NBC TV. It only ran for 34 episodes. I don't know if it was just like a revival of the Carol Burnett show from the 1970s, but it was called Carol and Company. It debuted in 1990. It only ran for about a season, and it had 34 episodes on that particular NBC television station. So that wraps up our On This Day in History, taking us back. So back to our episode here, just a few more facts, and I'll let Jimbo jump into the cast. The original air date for this episode was March the 31st, 1961. I already stated that earlier. The total production costs for this episode was $50,747.16. And of course, when we adjust that for inflation, we're looking at about $500,000 at $512,284.94. That's about a 909% increase over these many years. The dates of rehearsal were as follows: December the 12th through December the 16th. So that was kind of a long shooting schedule. You usually got maybe 3 days at the most for rehearsal. So looking like about 4 days there for rehearsal. And the dates of filming for this episode were December the 17th and the 18th of 1960. So that concludes the preliminary facts about this particular episode. Jimbo, go ahead and take away that cast.
Sure. You may recognize this gentleman, Philip Abbott. He played Chris Bells in this. He was in the great show Savannah Smiles. Eric, did you ever see Savannah Smiles?
I did not. I've never seen an episode.
You need to check it out. It's a good movie with Chief Pruitt.
Movie. Okay.
Where he played Chief Pruitt. He was also in Sweet Bird of Youth in 1962, and he was in The Invisible Boy in 1957. Then you had Lily Darvis. She played Grandma Bayless, or Bailey's. Yeah. Man, she did a pretty good job. She was pretty creepy in this
I didn't like her.
episode. Yeah.
Didn't like her at all. Meet Me in Las Vegas in 1956, and she was in the TV show The Man from U.N.C.L.E. for one episode. She was in a lot of other stuff, too. Then you have Patricia Smith with Sylvia Bells. She was in The Spirit of St. Louis in 1957. She was also a regular on the Debbie Reynolds show from 1969 to 70, where she played Charlotte Landers for 20 episodes. And yes, this gentleman needs no introduction. He's been in a lot of stuff. Bill Mummy. He played Billy, little Billy in this movie, or episode. He was probably most famous for his Lost in Space series, where he played Will Robinson. Danger, Will Robinson, Danger. But he was also in the great sci-fi television show Babylon 5, he played Lanier for 108 episodes in 1994, and then he also played 2 episodes as Lanier in 1995. Highly recommend Babylon 5 if you've never seen it. Then we have Jenny Maxwell, who played Shirley, the babysitter. She was in Blue Hawaii in 1961 with Elvis Presley, where she played Ellie. You had Reed Hammond, played Mr. Peterson. Henry Hunter, played the doctor. I thought he did a really good job. He was in a couple of ones I threw in because I've seen them. Munster Go Home. He was in that about the Munsters, where he was uncredited. And he was also in Son of Flubber, where he played the Admiral. And he's also been in a lot of other stuff. You had Lou Brown. He played the fireman. He was in the movie Airport. And you had Arch Johnson, who was another fireman that was uncredited. He was in the movie The Sting, if you've ever seen that. Robert McCord, he was the first fireman. He's uncredited. Jetta Parr, she was a nurse that was uncredited. And yes, the great
Rod Serling was the narrator and self-host. No explanations needed for his storied career. And that takes care of the cast for The Long Distance Call.
All right. So, just as a side note, Jenny Maxwell, who played the babysitter, had a kind of an untimely demise. A little bit of trivia here. I'm just going to read a little bit about her life outside of, obviously starring with Elvis Presley, and was a semi-successful star, but unfortunately was killed, actually murdered. I'm going to talk about that. On June 9th, 1981, Maxwell had minor surgery at a hospital, and while they lived separately at the time, Roeder, that was her husband at the time, his last name was Roeder, offered to drive her home once she exited the hospital. She took the offer, though her friends distrusted Roeder. On June the 10th, Maxwell and Roeder visited a restaurant together. Afterwards, they drove to Roeder's residence in Beverly Hills. Shortly afterwards, someone shot both Maxwell and Roeder, and when Roeder called for help, Maxwell was already dead with half of her head blown away. It's terrible. So, Roeder died shortly thereafter without identifying any assailant. Maxwell was 39 years old at the time of her death, and the police attributed the deaths to a botched robbery, though nothing was stolen from Roeder's residence. The case still officially remains unsolved. So that, that's kind of a sad end to Judy Maxwell's life. The girl who played the babysitter here in this particular episode. I don't know. I think she might have had half a dozen credits, maybe. But let's jump into the plot here of this episode. So Billy Bales loves his Grandma Bales and likes the present she's given him, a toy telephone, which she says will allow him or them to communicate forever. Grandma Bales is ill, however, and soon dies, but Billy claims he can speak to her on their special telephone. When he tells his parents that she wants him to join her, wherever she's gone to, they pay no mind. When he throws himself in front of the neighbor's car, however, it all gets deadly serious. Yeah, does it ever? Let me ask you this question. We'll throw this question in here. Now, I don't think it's the exact same phone that Billy has, but did you ever have one of the Fisher-Price plastic white telephone that the eyes rolled up and down and you...
Yeah, you would pull it along on the string and be...
Yeah. Did you ever have one of those?
Of course.
Yeah. I think every kid
we did have
America,
one back in our day.
Yeah, every kid in America had one at one point in time.
I think they still sell those.
Yeah, they do. Yeah,
I think my kids had them.
Yeah. Can you imagine? Can you imagine now, like giving your teenager a toy telephone, or even a younger even younger kids? They don't play with toy plastic telephones. They get the real thing.
Let me ask you a question then. Did your two daughters ever become so attached to a certain toy or a possession they had when they were younger, when they were kids?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure they did.
Do you remember any of them?
I can't think of any off the top of my head right now, but...
I mean, like my son, he had this stupid stuffed animal dog it was one of the 101 Dalmatians named Patch.
Yeah.
And he couldn't go to bed without Patch. And then when you tucked him in... and you kissed him goodnight, you had to kiss Patch goodnight, too, make sure he was okay with Patch, the dog.
Of course. So. Yeah. So Billy has this telephone that he's been given by his grandmother, his doting, loving grandmother. So we'll just go ahead and jump right into the episode here. And the episode opens, unless you have anything else that you want to throw in here. Did you cover everything that you...
I did so far.
Okay.
I will have a question when they pass the presents out, though. I want to see if you observe this.
All right, so I'm just going to follow the progression here. Chris brings Grandma down from the upstairs, and they come into like the living room, or actually it's a dining room area, it looks like, and it's all set up for young Billy's birthday party. And Grandma Bales is, again, accompanied by Chris, and Billy runs to greet Grandma Bales when she enters the room, and she lifts him up and, gives him a big hug and everything. And Chris tells her, hey, Grandma, don't exert yourself too heavily here, Billy. And she's like, oh, Billy's light as a feather or something like that. And so Billy comes over to the table, and his mom, Sylvia, brings the cake and with the lighted candles and sets it right in the middle of the table, and Billy blows out his candles. And there's obviously tension there between... You can feel this tension already early in the episode between the grandmother and Billy's mother, Sylvia. And really everybody, but, I mean, it's most palpable, I guess, between the mom and the grandma. And grandma is like super doting on Billy, and Billy loves her, and it's probably a case of where a mom feels kind of like left out of the equation, and I'll get to that towards the end. But this tension, sometimes that can arise just naturally through if you bring an older parent moves back in with a married couple, and they have a parent gets up there in age, and they're caring for that parent. Sometimes the dynamics in the household, it takes a lot of work, because sometimes, mothers/grandmothers can try to take over and, kind of usurp authority and stuff.
But I think you'll find out more about that when she's on her deathbed with what she says.
Oh, yeah.
Too.
I got it right here. Let's move. We'll keep moving. And so Grandma is quoted as they're having this discussion around the table. She stands up and she says, "I want to give a speech." So she says, "My little Billy, my wonderful little boy, he gave me life again. An old woman good for nothing, no more but to complain. He held out his hands to me and made me alive." So Billy is basically, Grandma is ill, and we come to find that out through the course of the episode, and Billy is basically what's keeping her alive. He's giving her love and affection that she feels like, she hasn't gotten, and, he's kind of like her life's blood almost, really. Like, he keeps her young and spry. So Grandma Bill's also she hints to Billy at her death, like her death is coming, and she uses the phrase, "I'm going to go away for a while." She doesn't tell him, that she's going to die, because Billy probably never experienced anyone dying in his young... what is he, like 5 years old now?
5, yeah, it's his fifth birthday.
Yeah. So he's only 5. He's never had to experience death before, and that's kind of a touchy subject, and that tension arises from that as well, because the parents are probably like, "Man, what is Grandma going to say to Billy?" Like, she can't go off and try to explain that he's just not going to understand what death is at this point. So they move from the dining room into the living room, and now it's presents time. They're going to hand out presents. And so Grandma, again, tries to one-up Mom and Dad. Mom and Dad have already purchased a few gifts, and they're laying out. You see a toy gun or whatever, but Grandma's like, "Oh, no, Billy, open my present first." Well...
No, so when they walk in there, he's already got the gun out shooting. And that's where if you notice, the mom comes over and she said, "Hey, Billy, I want you to open this one next because it's the one you really wanted."
Oh, right.
But Grandma says, "Hey, Billy, why don't you come open this present?" And what does Billy do? Billy doesn't care what he's really wanted. He wants to go open the one from Grandma. Mm-hmm. And right there, that was like, there's just something about the love between a grandmother and their grandson or granddaughter. It's just different, I guess. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, you and I aren't at that age yet, rapidly approaching that age, but neither one of us are grandpas yet. So I'm sure our time will come when we do the same thing.
Yeah. So Billy rushes over, he opens the present, and we discover that it's a toy telephone. And then Billy and Grandma, they pretend to have a conversation, with the toy telephone until Grandma looks faint. And she stands up, and she doesn't look very well. She looks faint, and she has to be escorted upstairs. And as she leaves, Billy repeats the line into his handset of his new toy phone. "Don't be sick, Grandma. Please don't be sick." And then the scene ends. Well, first let me back up. As the scene ends, enters Rod for his monologue, and of course we'll insert the monologue into the episode here. So Rod gives his monologue, and then the next scene that we come to, it opens actually in the upstairs bedroom, I believe. Grandma, she is sick and close to death, And the doctor, whose name is R. Unger, it's on his bag. That's the close-up shot that we get in the beginning of the scene. He is tending to Grandma, and after he finishes tending to her, he comes down the stairs, and he's shaking his head towards Chris, indicating that things don't look good at all for his mother. And so Billy, he's crying. Well, it's suggested that Sylvia take Billy upstairs and go to bed because, you know, the parents are really apprehensive. They don't know how to handle, like any of us, like, you don't really know how to handle a situation like this. They don't know whether, you know, Billy should be around his grandmother at this time or not. And so it's suggested that he goes up to bed, but Billy is crying and he's insistent that he wants to see his grandma again. You know, he's almost begging, like, I want to see my grandma. I want to see her. So Chris tries to explain to Billy that his grandmother is really sick and tells him to wait until she gets better. But then Billy just cries even more. And then eventually Chris, like, relents. And he's like, all right, well, I'm going to go take him. This might be, like, the last time that he gets to see her. So, you know, it's just that conflict of, like, should I let him see her the way she is, really ill? That might leave, like, a really deep impression on him. And, you know, he doesn't want to, you know, he's really, you can see that struggle and tension of what he should do. And so then Billy and the rest of the family come up to Grandma's bedside at the upstairs bedroom. And then and this might be where you had something that you wanted to say, but the exchange, did you notice, I'll just ask, did you notice that exchange between Grandma Bales and her son Chris was really chilling? Like I'll just go ahead and read it. It says, grandma says, because Billy, they let Billy down and he goes over and he's like, Grandma, and she's like, my angel. Yeah,
you
right.
know? And she basically, like, she recognizes him already, you know, and then when Chris comes over, you know, once Billy walks away or whatever, and she's just like, who are you? You know?
Yeah, exactly. He says, hello, Mom. She says, who are you? And he's like, I'm your son, Chris. I'm your son. She's like, no, my son was taken away from me by a woman. This is my son now. Billy is my son. I'm like, dude, that is... She probably was on a lot of medication. I'm going to give Grandma the benefit of the doubt. She was on medication. She didn't know what she was saying, but that is really bone-chilling to say something like that to your son. Like, no, you're not my son. You were taken away.
Let me ask you a question. Now, we will find out a little bit later in this episode that she had two sons before him. My question was, do you think this was a direct comment towards Chris's wife?
Yeah, I think so.
Or could she be referring to one of the other child that died? Did a lady take them away? You know what I mean?
I personally get the impression that it was directed toward Chris's wife. Like,
so do I, but that popped in my mind as the episode was progressing. But she just said son, so she didn't say sons because she had two of them. You know what I mean? So it was just a little back thought that I had. And while we're at this point, I did have something back from the first part of the movie. Mm-hmm. Two things. One, what do you think Billy's wish was when he blew out the candles, when he whispered into Grandma's ear and told him a wish? Because he wouldn't tell anybody else the wish. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know.
That right there, I was always told if you tell your wish, it doesn't come true. But he trusted enough to tell his grandma the wish.
Yeah, I don't know. That'd be one to speculate on.
If I could talk to Rod, I'd like to know that. And number two, how about them birthday hats, man? The one with the old rubber band that you would put on, snap you in your chin or whatever. That's something else, man. If you ever had one of those little birthday hats that snapped in you, man, that hurts. Yeah. It's just like them old Halloween masks you put on, you know. Yeah. You know what I mean? So,
maybe Billy's.
But that was just two that I had at the beginning.
Maybe Billy's wish that Grandma would be nicer to his mom. I don't know.
Well, maybe he wished that she wouldn't die, or that she wouldn't be sick or something, or that I could stay with you for, you know, just something like I wish you didn't have to go anywhere or something, you know. Yeah. I don't know. I just thought that was kind of slid in there without really explaining it, and I thought, very interesting.
Yeah. So Grandma, this is the first time we get a little insight toward the end of this scene. Grandma wants Billy and her to go far away together in death. So Grandma is a creep. And then, of course, we close the scene with Grandma Bales passes away. And So then the next scene opens up, and Billy is standing by over a pond. And that'll come into play later in the episode. So Billy is gazing into this pond that looks like it's in their backyard. And Sylvia says Billy has just not been himself all day. He's walking around like he's in a trance. You know, everyone is upset because of what's happened. And but Billy is taken to, you know, talking on the phone. And his mom is curious and asking Billy who he's talking to on the phone, and he tells his mom that he's talking to his grandma and that she's lonely, and she's asking him, can he come stay with her? And you're like, dude, this is getting...
But I'm sure you can relate to this. When he comes back inside and she says, hey, go upstairs or whatever, you know, he comes in and he just takes his coat off and he just throws it on the ground as he goes upstairs, which his mom comes over and picks it up later in the episode. But how many times have we been there? You know what I mean? Like, he just throws...
Yeah, he's a typical 5-year-old kid. And so the next scene, I believe, the parents are entering the home, like a scene from the outside, and they're entering the home, and it looks as though they have returned from the funeral, and it's discovered that Billy was playing out in the street because their neighbor, Peterson, is sitting there in the home, and we discover that Billy was playing in the street, and his babysitter, Shirley, she's nervous and scared, and she's just trying to explain what happened, and she's all kinds of nervous, and so the neighbor is, you know, he's pretty shaken up too, and he tries to explain, you know, if I wasn't, you know, an observant driver and I hadn't hit my brakes in time, you know, I would have easily hit your son, so you need to have he's kind of stern with him and with Chris, like, you need to have a talk with your son. And he's like, most of all, you know what's most crazy about it? When I asked him why he did a foolish thing like jumping in front of a car, Billy told me somebody told him to. So now, man, this thing is taking a real ominous turn. This episode, you're like, holy smokes, this grandma is nutty. Like, she's out there trying to kill her own grandson. So Shirley says that, it's asked, like, well, who's Billy been talking to? And Shirley's like, guys, I would never say anything like that to him, or I would, ever suggest that he play in the street. And so Shirley says that...
She said, he's just been upstairs talking on his little phone all night.
He's only been up in his room talking on the telephone, that toy telephone, all afternoon. That's the only person that he's come in contact with this entire day. So this causes Chris and Sylvia to be really concerned, and the stress that it puts on the family is almost unbearable at this point. Chris tries to, he tries to comfort his wife, and, that's, Jimbo, what you alluded to earlier, where through their conversation, he's trying to comfort his wife, and she's obviously very upset. He again recounts, like, hey, my mom had a total of 3 children. 2 of them died. I was the only one that was left, and once I grew up and moved out and got married and had a family, Billy kind of took my place. And so, so he kind of explains that dynamic and reassures her that everything is going to be okay, and that they decide that, hey, let's just go to bed. And because Sylvia was like really upset, because I think this might be like the second time that she caught Billy like talking on the phone. And then I left out an important part. So she hears him through the door talking on the phone. She comes in, grabs the receiver out of his hand, puts it up to her ear, and she can hear Grandma Bales breathing on the other end. Right? So, yeah, pretty crazy. So then Chris has a conversation with Billy and tells him, hey, don't tell your mom any of this stuff. Like, this is going to upset her.
But is this where they're in bed and she gets up because she hears him talking and he's like, hooray for Peter Pan. That's a great story, Grandma. You know what I mean? And I'm thinking, man, is Grandma like in the, one of the kids that don't grow up now, and his mom, is this where she breaks his telephone?
Yeah, actually, the first time she just gets really upset and like leaves the room because Billy's telling her, all the stuff about Grandma and how he's talking to her and all that stuff. So she just kind of leaves the room. Then they have that conversation in mom and dad in their bedroom. And then they go to bed about 3 a.m., which again, Grandma, what are you doing calling Billy at 3 a.m.? He's 5 years old. He's got to get his rest. And then he's talking to her on the phone. Sylvia wakes up and listens outside his bedroom door. She hears like giggling and laughter and the Peter Pan thing. And then she bursts in, and that's when she grabs the receiver. I'm sorry, I got that, backwards. And then she hears Grandma breathing on the other end of the phone. And then Billy just darts and runs downstairs. His mom follows after him and discovers that he has thrown himself in the pond and appears to have drowned. And
well, I don't think he darts out right there, because she goes and she tells her husband that, hey, I heard her breathing to her husband. Remember?
I think Chris comes in Billy's room around the same time, and then they're like trying to talk to each other, and that's when Billy darts down the stairs. And it's really good how they did the cinematography here, and I'll get into that in some of the trivia of what the shot was supposed to be versus how it ended up. And so the paramedics arrive in the next scene, and they attempt to revive Billy. And I'm jumping ahead here just for time. And Sylvia, obviously, she's hysterical. And Chris, I'll just say this, he makes one last attempt, an appeal to his deceased mother, and that is the final scene really up in Billy's room, where he takes the toy telephone and he sort of like, he asks his mother to give him back. He hasn't even lived his life yet.
Right.
I see you got your trusty companion.
I got my trusty Twilight Zone companion, because actually it was actually in the script written a different way. Mm-hmm. So here's how the scene was supposed to go. This is how it was originally supposed to be. So it was supposed to be, Ma, if you can hear me, give him back to us. You said you loved me, and I know you did. I remember so many things. Remember that funny little dog I had? You let me keep him even when he tore up all the furniture. Pa wanted to give him away, but you said no. And remember the first day of school, how scared I was? And you sat in the back of the room all morning so I wouldn't cry? And that first pair of long pants? And the time I broke the window with the ball? You hid me under the bed when the policeman came? My graduation? And that first date I had, you remember? With that skinny redhead, how mad you were? We had lots of fights, but I always knew you loved me. And I loved you, too, so very, very much. I never really got a chance to tell you, oh, Ma, please give him back to us so we can love him too. Give him back to us. Now, Chuck Beaumont and I says we're sitting on the set when they were shooting the show, says Idelson, and Rod came down and said, I don't like that last speech. He says, I want you to change it. Chuck and I went to an office and changed it on the spot. What emerged was this speech, which took the focus away from the father in that speech and put it more back onto Billy where it belongs. It says, Mother, if you can hear me, listen. You said you loved Billy. At his birthday, you picked him up and you hugged him, and you said he gave you life again. If you really love Billy, give him back. He's only 5. He hasn't even started. He doesn't know anything about going to school or girlfriends or wearing long pants, even pitching a baseball. He's hardly been out of this room, out of this house. There's a whole world he hasn't even touched. Mother, you said Billy gave you life. Now can you give him life? If you really love him, let him live. Give him back, Ma. So when the show went on the air, Idelson said they all came over to his house, Chuck, Dick, Matheson, and Bill Nolan, and they were all very complimentary. It was a tremendous thrill for him. So,
yeah, that's good stuff about that last-minute rewrite. Let's talk about our child star here, Bill Mumy, and we'll talk about him, just some highlights of his really illustrious career. So, just a few highlights. He was the original choice to play Eddie Munster in the 1960s cult TV series, The Munsters. He was this is interesting. He was a lifelong friend of James Stewart, or Jimmy Stewart, with whom he co-starred in the film Dear Brigitte in 1965. Stewart and Mumy, their families all knew each other, and they were often together off screen. Stewart's wife, Gloria, having been Moomie's Sunday school teacher. He can still do a perfect imitation of Stewart's voice, one that frequently cracked him up during his lifetime. And they were all members of the Beverly Hills Presbyterian Church. He has 95 credits as an actor, but here's the thing. He is a very talented and well-known musician, songwriter, recording artist, and as well as a writer. He plays the guitar, the bass, the keyboard, the banjo, the mandolin, the harmonica, and percussions, and he sings. And then Jimbo already touched on this earlier. When Bill first appeared as Will Robinson in the popular TV series Lost in Space in 1965, he was just a child actor. Over 50 years later, he became the only actor from the original series to reprise his role in the remake Lost in Space in 2018. Did you ever see the remake? It was on Netflix. It was pretty good.
I watched like the first or second episode, 1 to 2 episodes. Yeah, I don't think I watched it all of it.
Me and my kids watched it. It was a pretty good series. Let's see, what else about Bill Moomie? He just said this about that experience. He said, I had a great time doing Lost in Space in 1965. With the exception of a couple days, I don't have any unpleasant memories of the show. The only thing I'm bitter about is that the show runs constantly in syndication and none of the actors get paid. Nonetheless, I made a lot of money at the time. My family invested it well for me, and I have a lot of nice things. I can't complain. So he was a very talented guy. He's one of those child actors that, he's had a long, illustrious career. No major hiccups with like drugs or alcohol or, going to prison like so many child actors have fallen victim to. And he was very talented, it sounds like. And he wrote a lot of songs for Disney, I think. Also starred in a couple Disney movies. I think he was in... actually, one of his inspirations was watching Zorro, Disney's Zorro from 1957. And it says here that while he was watching that TV series, young Bill broke his leg attempting to recreate one of the show's stunts in his bedroom. So he was kind of inspired by the Disney Zorro kind of jump-started his career.
Sounds like he was a one-man Partridge Family, too, with everything that he could do, play and sing and all that.
Yeah, no kidding. So just a little quick bio about Bill Moomie. If you don't have anything else to say about the episode itself, we can jump into some trivia. You want to go first? You got any trivia points you want to hit?
Well, I have 2 observations.
Okay.
That I'll save till... If you got any more trivia. Yeah,
I got a few here if you want to save those. Okay, so let's talk about, let's talk about the Twilight Zone and Bill Moomie and the Twilight Zone. This is the first of 3 appearances by Bill Moomie in the original series. It's a Good Life, In Praise of Pip, and it's Still a Good Life in 2003. So he must have reoccurred in 2003 episode. And Long Distance Call, obviously. So a Long Distance Call, It's a Good Life, and In Praise of Pip were the 3 original episodes that he was in. This episode in particular was the first episode that Rod Serling did not write or produce. He only received a credited by credit in this episode. So the original script for this particular episode called for 6-year-old Bill Moomie's character to be found floating face down in the decorative pond behind the house. However, the child actor's mother refused to allow her son to participate in the drowning scene. Since director James Sheldon modified the shot to show only the father reaching into the pond to pull Billy out carefully, and they filmed it carefully to exclude having to show the boy. Moomie says, I wanted to do it. I was a very good swimmer, but Mom was terrified that I would get some weird ideas about suicide if I did.
Well, I was reading, he said that they actually did film some of those shots. That he said they filmed him where he was actually floating in there.
Okay.
It was in one of these books I was reading, but I thought you would cover it, so I left it out. But he said, I have vague memories of actually shooting them. He said, but it didn't make the cut or whatever. That's when his mom stepped in and said all that.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see it the other way. But, I mean, Well, I mean, it's 1960s on, broadcast television. So, I mean, this even well, I'll get to it in my closing comments, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So this is the last. You talked about this earlier, Jimbo. This is the last of the 6 videotaped episodes for the Twilight Zones for the series. The script, and Jimbo already talked about this. The script was rewritten even as it was being filmed, so that we already talked about the final scene being rewritten on the spot. And I think that's all really that I have of any trivia. So, Jimbo, go ahead and make your remarks and observations. And
all right, I'm going to propose this because I read it somewhere, and I'm going to see what you think. Do you really think that Billy can hear his grandma on the phone, or do you believe that he believed he could, which manifested to even where his mother, when she picked up the phone, could hear the grandma breathing? Kind of like when they do a poltergeist. They say a poltergeist activity is energy that you've manifested yourself that happens in your house, the energy and all that. So do you think that it was really her, or do you think it was all in Billy's imagination?
Well, I think Chris, his dad, leaned toward the idea that it was just his wild imagination that he was hearing and speaking to his grandmother. But I think for the purposes of this episode, why would Billy imagine, he's so young, he just turned 5, right? Why would he imagine throwing himself in front of a car and then making up a big elaborate, excuse that someone told him to?
Well, I mean, grief does some weird things to some people, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but for me, I guess I would say that, obviously I don't believe that he really talked to her, but for the purposes of this episode, yeah, I think he really was hearing from his grandmother. Makes more sense to me, I guess. His dad
says some stuff that would make you think. Do you think that Billy falls on the autism spectrum? Again, I got 6 books here I was reading through, so this is some of the stuff that was being pointed out in here.
I don't know. I don't have a quick answer for that. I'd have to sit and contemplate that.
It would be what we consider the autism spectrum today, not what it was probably called back then, you know what I mean?
All right. Boy, I don't know. That's a hard one. Yeah, I don't know how to answer that. I would have to really go back and examine the footage again, and because I don't know a lot of the markers. I'm not real familiar. I mean, I know basic markers of, autistic tendencies, but that'd be interesting.
Right. So those were the 2 things that I was going to ask you, just to see if you,
right. What do you think? If you think he would have been on the spectrum there?
I don't think so. But then again, I'm not that adverse into the autism spectrum, so I don't know. I mean, I've known people with autism, but I don't know enough about it to say one way or the other. You know what I mean? So I don't want to say anything that would give me the wrong impression to somebody that they think I know what I'm talking about when I don't. Yeah. I'm just saying that's what I read in the book, and I just, maybe if somebody out there that has an autistic person in their family or knows somebody, they may be more inclined to be able to answer this better than this idiot right here, or even that one over there.
Yeah, so same. Yeah. Okay. So here goes for me. Questions and observations. We already talked about the most impactful funeral that you ever attended. We talked about that off the top of the episode. But just a question: how dark is this episode for this era? And let me set the context for you. Okay, it's 1961. They write a show where a 5-year-old boy dies or appears to die by drowning via suicide on primetime television. This ain't no Leave It to Beaver stuff. Like, this was probably a groundbreaking episode for its time, and just the subject matter and how ominous, and even dealing with the difficult issue of death would have been something that would have been highly impactful.
Well, and I also think we're only in season 2. But as we progress, you will see in future episodes, I believe it's called The Bewitching Pool, if I remember correctly, where the kids dive into the pond and, there's some thought about that issue, too, about the kids would basically killing themselves to go to be in that happy place and all that. So, yeah, but for the time, it had to be very shocking. And I'm surprised that I couldn't find anything in those books about people writing into Rod Serling.
Yeah, right?
They want to write into him about some stupid stuff about aliens on an asteroid, but they don't want to write in about this. What is wrong with America back then even? You know what I mean? We know what's wrong with it today, but for back then, they want to write out on some other stuff and call him out. And I was like,
suicide.
They don't want to say anything about this one.
Suicide didn't bother him. A 5-year-old suicide didn't bother him.
Whatever. I was like.
So, here are my 2 more points. Grandma has no respect for boundaries. Okay. She tries to usurp the parents' authority. She's selfish, hateful to her son, and evil. Okay. I don't like Grandma at all in this. She's a great actress. She played a great part, which is the telling tale of why I hate her so much, I guess, by the end of this episode. She's despicable. But having said all of that about Grandma, I was really captivated by the episode. It was an ominous feeling throughout the entire episode. It really captured my attention all the way through. A lot of times I'll start out really on an episode and I'll just sort of trail off and I'll watch it before I go to bed sometimes and I'll lose interest midway through the episode. This was not one of those episodes. I think if I remember correctly, the first time I actually saw it, I was like laying in bed and I just like sat up immediately, like, what in the world did they just show? Like, I can't believe they went there with this. I was actually shocked, and as were probably the audiences back then. I think it's out of the videotaped episode. I think it's a close call between this one and 22 as the best videotaped episode. But I'm going to leave that right there. I thought it was one of the better ones, if not the best videotaped episode thus far. And we're putting those to bed, so it'll be the last videotaped episode that we see. Jimbo,
right.
Let me have it.
I will, but let me read this one last thing to you. This is basically this is talking about the last of the videotaped era of the Twilight Zone. This is from my trusty companion once again by Mark Scott Zickery. I implore everybody to buy this book. It's a great book. So here we go. Long Distance Call was the last episode of the Twilight Zone to be videotaped. In all, Cayuga had saved $5,000 per episode. But for a series that required the entire universe as a stage, the limitations of tape far outweigh the advantages. In 1972, Serling finally made public his feelings on the subject. In an interview with Douglas Broad in Show magazine, he said, quote, "I never liked tape because it's neither fish nor fowl. You're bound to the same kind of natural laws as in live TV, but they try to mix it with certain qualities of film. On Twilight Zone, we tried 6 shows on tape, and they were disastrous. Although Serling and company were done with the 6 tape episodes, others were not. Both Static and Long Distance Call resulted in lawsuits against Cayuga by writers who had submitted stories to the Twilight Zone, one of which utilized a magical toy telephone, the other a magical radio. Unfortunately, because the Twilight Zone was essentially a show that relied on various supernatural or scientific gimmicks, it left itself wide open to such charges. There were accusations floating around all the time that Rod was stealing every story that was ever written, and Rod was very self-conscious about it, says Buck Houghton. Science fiction is a limited field, and you can't write it without stepping on somebody's former ideal. It's like saying that every love story is a still of Romeo and Juliet. You know, boy gets a girl, boy loses girl, boy wins girl is not copyrightable. But there was this feeling. Ultimately, settlements were made in both of the cases. Following the tape shows, Cayuga broke for the remainder of the winter. For most of the production crew, this meant a well-deserved vacation, but not for Serling. If anything, his workload increased, preparing 6 of the remaining 7 scripts of the season. Shooting of film episodes resumed at the beginning of March 1961 with two very different stories of time travel, both by Serling. So, just a little heads up that people were still after him about stealing their shows and all that. But in the end, the videotaped didn't let them have the boundaries that they needed to do. You know, time and space and all that. It limited it to them what they could do with special effects and all that. So, yeah. Now let's get to the meat. What everybody wants to know, Eric. What are you rating this episode?
I mean, just overall or this season?
No. Well, we'll get to that at the end of the season.
Okay. Well,
our recap. Well, where are you gonna 1 to 10? Where are you putting this bad boy?
I'm gonna go like I'm gonna say a strong 7.5, and maybe leaning to an 8. I thought it was a really well done, and just because of my shock and reaction, like I described earlier, I think for that jolt alone, it got at least a 7.5. I thought Moomie's performance was great. I mean, he was a great child actor. I mean, the guy basically owns all of science fiction, as far as child actors are concerned. So I thought he did a good job. The parents, they were okay. And then the grandmother, obviously, she did a marvelous job, because I come to despise her by the end of the episode for all that she did. I mean, can you imagine your grandma being like that to you, man? Like, that's...
Well, hang on. Look, my grandma, when I had my kid, the first one and the second one, but... you go over to her house, you go visit, and they get, they're doing something they shouldn't be doing. Oh, well, they're going to get in trouble. Well, you can't do that at my house. You wait till you get home. My grandpa be like, they got to take care of it now, So, yeah, so you give it about a 7.75 then, huh?
Sure, we can go with that. What do you say? You didn't like it as well, probably.
Not, as a wise man once used to say on ESPN, not so fast, my friend.
You're so critical.
Well, once again, it's another stupid videotaped episode, and I think that downplays a lot of it for me, because it just looks weird.
Okay.
Billy, he was obnoxious to me. Okay, I think he was a spoiled brat. I think he hasn't been. I mean, let's think about it. I don't think he's been told many times in his life by his grandma or his parents. Because you go in there and you see the pile of presents, because they keep bringing them presents up there, and they're like, hey, this is the one you really wanted. I think you should open this one. The girl's like, no, Billy, come over here. Let's open Grandma's. Yeah, because Grandma's always better. It was just a little over the top for me. I did like the dad and mom's performance. I liked them a lot. And that grandma was creepy. She was really creepy, especially on her deathbed. I was like, her hands are like, up here, and the sun goes over there and gives that powerful performance. I wouldn't say it's going to be in my top 10 of this season. It's probably a mid-tier episode for me, if I have to be honest. Which I can't wait till we do our recap of season 2, because I got a feeling me and you are going to be all over the place when we do this. I don't even know if we would have a clear number 1 and 2 like we did last season. Yeah, but for me, it was just an average episode. And again, I think most of that's with the videotape. Like I say this every time we do a videotaped episode, that it bothers me. And I don't know why, because it's weird. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah,
I
think everybody understood that it was weird at the time even, and that's why they canned it, because it wasn't saving any money.
But yeah, you still have daytime soap operas that use that exact same stuff these days. It's still on there.
Let me tell you.
So yeah, for me.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, something that's interesting. IMDb actually rated this episode lower than the next episode that we're going to cover, 100 Yards Over the Rim. It actually, which I don't know how that one got rated higher than this one.
It's easily because it's better. Point blank, it's a better episode.
Okay, well,
we'll find out soon, because we'll be doing that shortly.
Yeah.
So I think we've rattled on long enough for this. This one's been about an hour long, according to my standards or my timing. So, you got anything else to add before we head out?
Nope.
Right off into this fifth dimension?
Nope. I think
we covered it. If you'd like to reach out to us, write us at the tragedyofcinema@gmail.com. If you want to join the Facebook page, we are the Tragedy of Cinema podcast on Facebook. If you'd like to leave a review, you can do that. Eric, you want to take over anything else I might have forgot at the second?
No, we just got a few things that we've got in the hopper. We won't reveal all those things as of yet, but it's glad to be just expressing gratitude to be back in. I think our schedules are maybe going to align a little bit here in the near future. We, like Jimbo said, we can close out this season 2 and put it to bed. So I know it's kind of been spotty as of late. So we did really well at the beginning of this year of being on a really good schedule. We were very disciplined in our recording, so I miss doing it, and glad to be back in and back at it again. So I don't have anything else.
So hopefully, I'm getting excited too because we're getting ready to go into season 3, and I believe season 3, 4, and 5, there are some that I've never seen because they weren't the ones that would be playing on the marathons and all that either. So I've never watched them all, so
Right.
I'm kind of getting excited.
Yeah.
At first, if you could go back and watch some of the Twilight Zones for the first time again, awesome.
Pretty cool.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, well, with that being said, I think this episode's coming to a close, and that's a wrap.
And cut.
A toy telephone, an act of faith, a set of improbable circumstances all combined to probe a mystery, to fathom a depth, to send a facet of light into a dark after region, to be believed or disbelieved, depending on your frame of reference, a fact or a fantasy, a substance or a shadow, but all of it very much a part of the Twilight Zone.